Alright guys, welcome back to Music 61 and 61A. Today in rhythm we're going to cover tied notes. So I have on the slide here X's to represent any note value. It doesn't matter what the note value is. It could be a half note, quarter note, whole note. They're just to be general placeholders for any note value. Normally ties happen across the bar. Looking here at rhythm A, I got 100 beats per minute as my tempo, and I'm in 4/4. First thing that I have is a half note pickup. So there's 2 beats that are going to be a pickup into the first measure. Remember 4/4 divides down the middle, 2 plus 2. So here I have 2 quarter notes in my first 2 beats, and then 2/8 and a quarter in my second 2 beats. Okay, it's 2 halves of a measure here. Next measure I have 4/8 notes and then a half note. And notice that my half note here is tied across the bar into the next measure. So I'm going to hold that note as I continue on through the next measure. Here I have something that I normally wouldn't notate like this. The book does. You have a quarter note and then a half note in the middle of the bar in 4/4 and then another quarter note. Maybe they did it because it's easier to read. I would have, for the sake of these measure boundaries, kept it as maybe as a quarter note tied to a quarter note so that you can see how the measure divides 2 plus 2. Here they put a big fat half note right in the middle of the bar, and that kind of kills the sense of 4/4. But anyway, that's what it is. Here we have the first 2 beats as a half note, and the second 2 beats as 2 quarter notes. Next is 2/8 notes and a quarter, 2/8 notes and a quarter. And that last quarter note, notice, is tied over the bar. And we have the same problem in this measure. Notice that it's they have a half note in the middle of the measure, so that half note kind of sits across the halfway point of the bar. Again, I probably would have tied a quarter note, but I can see maybe the reason is they want to keep it without having so many ties. I don't think it's as clear. Next measure, we have 2/8 notes and a quarter, and then a half rest. Measure 8, I have a whole note. So that entire measure is one big ta, and notice that it's tied into the next bar. Next bar, my quarter note and 2/8 notes, and that quarter note is tied into the previous whole note. So that's going to be 5 beats total that we're going to hold that ta. And then there's a half rest. Same thing in the next measure. We have a whole note, so I'm not going to put anything on there as far as the measures divide. It's all the way across ta, tied to a quarter note and another quarter note. So that's my first 2 beats of the measure 11. Half rest. Next measure, I have a half rest and a half note. Half note is tied across the bar. 2 quarter notes. The first quarter note is tied to that previous half note. And then I have 2/8 notes and a quarter. These are all rhythmic elements in how they fill 2 beats. Different patterns of that, right? And now you see I have 2/8 notes and a quarter, 2/8 notes and a quarter. 4/8 notes, 2 quarter notes, and then I have a half note, and that's half of a measure because the first part began with a pickup of a half a measure. So those 2 measures together make one full measure. All right, let's try this one. Okay, there's a 100. Ta 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 ti ti ta ti 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 ta 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 ti ti ta ti ti ta ta ti 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 ta ta ti ti ta 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 ti ti ta ti ti ta ti ti ta ti 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 ta ta
ta.
Rhythm B, 152 beats per minute is my tempo, and I'm in 2/4. 2/4 does not break down into any half measures. The measure itself is complete. It's the smallest kind of measure that we have. So here we have 2/8 notes and 2/8 notes in measure 1, a dotted quarter and an eighth note in measure 2, dotted quarter and eighth note in measure 3, syncopation in measure 4, 2/8 notes and a quarter rest in measure 5, 2/8 notes and 2/8 notes in measure 6. Measure 7 has a dotted quarter and an eighth. Measure 8 has a dotted quarter and an eighth. Measure 9 has a syncopation. And measure 10 has a quarter and a quarter rest. Measure 11 has 2/8 notes and 2/8 notes. Next, I have a dotted quarter and an eighth note. And then I have a dotted quarter and an eighth note tied across the bar. That's going to be tricky. Here I have 2/8 notes and 2/8 notes. In theory, that's pretty easy, but they're the first and the last eighth note are tied over the bar to other eighth notes. So that's really hard. That's probably the hardest rhythm we've had all semester. And then my next measure, I have those 2/8 notes, the first of which is tied and a quarter rest. Now we're getting back to some more regular stuff. 2/8 notes and 2/8 notes. Dotted quarter note and an eighth note. Dotted quarter note and an eighth note. Syncopation. And a quarter rest. Alright, let's give this one a try.
Here's 152. Ti 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 ta ti ta ti ti ta ti 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 ta ti ta ti ti ta ti ta ti 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 ta ti ta ti 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 ta ti ta ti ti ta ti ta. Okay, I imagine that line 2, measure 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 are going to be tricky. So let's slow down and let's practice that for a minute. Ta, ti, 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 ti. Ta, ti, 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 ti. See those ties on the eighth notes there. Ta, ti, 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 ti. Ta, ti, ti, ti. Whoops, I messed up again. Ta, ti, 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 ti. I messed up again. Ta, ti, 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 ti. That's what it is. Okay, so we can start to get used to it. We start to speed up a little bit. Ta, ti, 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 ti. Again. Ta, ti, ti, ti. No, I messed up. Ta, ti, 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 ti. Ta, ti, ti. Ta, ti, 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 ti. Ta, ti, 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 ti. Ta, ti, 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 ti. Okay, and then the more you do it, the better you get at it, and the more you can speed up and then put it into the exercise. That's a tough one. Alright, that's it for tied notes. You can see there's not much to it, except when you want to have a value of note go over the bar line or over a particular measured division, then you use a tie to indicate the length of the note. That's all. Let's go ahead to the melodies.